Welcome to the podcast about Tatars in Poland. I am Maurits Berger, Professor of Islam in the West at Leiden University in the Netherlands.
And I am Ewa Górska, an Assistant Professor at the Digital Justice Center at the University of Wrocław in Poland. Together we'll explore the history, identity and traditions of the Tatars, the Muslim minority that has lived in Poland for around 600 years. Our quest will take us to remote parts of Poland, but also into libraries and into meetings with Tatars from all walks of life.
Our question is, who are the Tatars in Poland and how do they carve out their lives in Polish society? And is Islam here in Poland different from somewhere else? These are more than academic questions. They are also questions about the ways that Muslims are part of Europe.
This is episode 6, the Imam and the Mufti.
We now know that the Tatar identity is both religious and cultural. This is not just something in the minds of the Tatars. It's also reflected in the way they are organized. Because they are religious communities headed by an imam and cultural communities headed by the local Tatar.
To find out more, we first go to meet Bronisław Talkowski, head of the Tatar community in Kruszyniany, the place with the picturesque small green wooden mosque.
My jesteśmy 600-letnią historią tutaj w Polsce. Ja jestem tego takim przykładem.
We have 600 years of history here in Poland. That is when Prince Vytautas invited the Tatar troops to come over. And later in 1679, King John Sobieski settled a Tatar detachment under the command of Colonel Samuel Krzeczkowski. I am a descendant of Colonel Krzeczkowski, but my roots are documented all the way back to 1397.
Jest w prostej linii. Ja jestem jego potomkiem. Ja przykładowo w domu mam Koran, który był pisany ręcznie, który ma już ponad 300 lat. Ja miałem 3 braci.
I have a handwritten Quran at home that is 300 years old. But when I was young, 2 of my brothers were married to Catholic women, and their children were baptized. And my father asked me to somehow be closer to Islam and closer to the Tatar community. And in it happened that I married a half-Tatar woman because my mother-in-law was a Catholic and my father-in-law was a Tatar. And we raised our children in Islam. And that is how I got involved in the preservation of our community. In the year 2000, I was elected as head of the community here in Kruszyniany. And together with Janetta, who you met earlier, we started to rebuild this place. We restored the mosque and the Islamic cemetery and built a restaurant and a museum to receive people to tell them about the Tatars. We needed a lot of money to do that, and we got funds from the European Union and from the Ministry of Culture from Kuwaiti government, and we put in our own money.
Ponad 700,000 musieliśmy się zapożyczyć.
Mr. Talkowski is clearly very proud of everything that he has accomplished. I can hardly keep up with everything he tells us, but gradually his enthusiasm turns into a kind of bitterness when he starts to talk about more organizational matters. He is clearly not happy with the way the Tatar community in Poland is managed.
Tragedię mamy naprawdę, a przy tym wszystkim państwo polskie, rząd polski się w to wszystko wmieszał.
It's a tragedy indeed. And with all this, the Polish state, the Polish government got involved in all this. And what you said about these democratic elections, about the imams, all of this is with us. This creates such a powerful problem for us that we as a Tatar community have a very big discomfort and problem. We now have a serious problem with the Mufti, the leader of the Tatar Muslim community in Poland. You see, imams are elected by their communities, and the Mufti is elected by the representatives of all those communities who come together in a congress. But when the Mufti of today, Mr. Tomasz Miśkiewicz, was elected in 2004, not all conditions of the election were fulfilled. He was too young, and he did not have a university degree. We protested, but the Ministry of Internal Affairs had already confirmed the election, and there was nothing we could do about it. And worse, he has been appointed for life. And as soon when he was elected, he started a business making money with halal certificates. He puts the stamp of Mufti on products and makes a lot of money with that. This tragedy is still happening today. We're not able to deal with it, and the state persists that the Mufti is appointed for life.
W ustawie jest zapisane, że mufti musi być dozgonny.
The position of Mufti in Poland has a history. Over the centuries, Polish Tatars were under the religious administration of the Mufti of Crimea. This changed in 1918, after Poland regained independence. For 123 years prior, it had disappeared from the map after being partitioned by Russia, Prussia, and Austria. After independence, Polish Tatars established the Polish Muslim Religious Union, led by a Polish Mufti, with the seat of the office in Vilnius, which was then part of Poland. However, after World War II, Poland's borders shifted again, losing eastern lands to the Soviet Union and gaining former German territories in the west. Many Tatars were forced to relocate, and Vilnius became part of Lithuania. At that time, under communist rule, between 1945 and 1989, the Muslim Religious Union resumed its activities but without a Mufti. Then, in 2004, Polish Muslims decided to restore the Polish Muftiate and elected a new Mufti, Tomasz Miśkiewicz. We want to meet him, but he is not an easy man to pin down. I had to reschedule a meeting twice, but now he finally agreed to meet us online. So here we are, sitting behind the laptop on a wooden table in our hotel.
Jesteśmy już, tak?
Jesteśmy.
Sabah al-khair. I tried to speak Arabic with him, but he prefers Polish. So it is again up to Ewa to conduct the entire interview. And she first asks him about his background.
W wieku 17 lat.
I went abroad to study Islam when I was 17, to Syria. But then there was the Gulf War and I went to Sudan. There I spent 1.5 years learning the Arabic language and Islam. Then I moved on. Then I moved to Saudi Arabia for higher education. I was one of the few Poles who did so, and when I returned in 2000, I was asked by a few communities to become their imam. But in 2004, I was elected Mufti, and I have been in that position ever since. They wanted someone like me, because you must understand, for us, the Tatar community in that time, shortly after the collapse of communism, for us, religion was a novelty. We only knew the Tatar traditions, and to know the religion, we also needed to know Arabic. I am the Mufti in Poland, and my role is to issue opinions on religious issues, resolve certain religious disputes, give recommendations about religious situations. But I would say that 3/4 of my time is spent in representing the Muslim community towards the government. You must understand that the Muslim community is small and also divided. There are about 75,000 Muslims in Poland, but only 2,000 of them are Tatar. The overall majority are foreigners from Asia, like the Caucasus, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan.
Z Kaukazu, z Azerbejdżanu, z Turkmenistanu, z Uzbekistanu, ze Sri Lanki, z Pakistanu.
This brings us back to reality. Only 2,000 Tatars in Poland. That is a very, very small minority. But not only as Muslims in Poland, they are also a small minority within the much larger group of Muslim foreigners. It reminds me of the Friday prayer in Gdansk that Ewa and I had attended, where around 300 people had gathered, but they were all foreign. The Tatars, so we were told, preferred to come separately on Sundays. But this raises another question, because we understand that the Mufti and the imams are elected. But by who? Only the Tatars? Or all the Muslims in Poland? And how does that work?
Among the Tatars, every community elects its own imam. If they cannot agree, or if there is no one available, I will appoint someone. But you must realize that these Tatar communities live far away from the large cities, mostly in Podlasia. The foreign Muslims, on the other hand, live in the large cities like Warsaw and Gdańsk, because that is where they work. For them, I appoint the imams. Usually they are imams from abroad, and I always send them on Polish language course.
Ewa interrupts him. Would it be possible, she asks, would it be possible for foreign Muslims to elect their own imams?
Yes, of course they have the right to elect their own imam, but only if they have organized themselves first in a separate religious association that is legally recognized. But that is only to elect their imam. The Mufti remains the one who represents the entire Muslim community, regardless of the organization. When there are state ceremonies, for instance, there are no other people apart from the Mufti. But now we have the situation that I have competition, because there is a new organization that claims to represent the Muslims in Poland, and they have elected their own Mufti.
The Mufti is honest enough to raise this issue, but clearly does not want to talk about it. We had already heard about these internal struggles. But that is what they are, internal struggles in the Muslim communities of Poland. Because this Mufti is still recognized by the Polish state, and any other Mufti who might be elected will not be invited for a state ceremony or by ministries for consultation. Still, it is quite a unique situation that not only the imams are elected by the congregations, but also that the Mufti is elected by the Muslim community. But I want to get back to what he does in terms of Islam. If he wants to introduce the Islamic theology that he learned in the Arab world, if he wants to introduce that to the Tatars who have only lived in accordance to their own traditions, how does he do that?
I will say this. If you want to understand Islam or interpret Islamic law, any mufti or any scholar must go to the books first and foremost, to the collections of old religious books. He must also look at the situation in other countries. Here, of course, Saudi Arabia plays a big role, but also Egypt, Morocco, and Turkey. And in the case of Ramadan, for instance, I know that it is a big thing to determine the starting day, because Islam tells us that it is at the moment when the moon is first visible. And countries always come up with different dates. I have decided that we just stick with the calendar. I hope that in the future, other Muslim countries will do the same, because this moon is only a religious symbol. It has no great significance.
Symbol religijny, który ewentualnie, jeżeli dzień wcześniej czy dzień później zaczniemy pościć, nie ma dużego znaczenia.
I whisper in Eva's ear that I have one more question. In Western European countries, large segments of the Muslim population try to live in accordance with the rules of Islam. And often they do so in quite a strict manner. How is that with Tatar Muslims?
I will say this. People who discover Islam, whether they are already Muslim or not, such people are usually very demanding, very orthodox. From a certain point of view, I understand them, because they want to understand the religion within 5 minutes and start practicing the whole religion within 10 minutes. But I always say, that's not possible. You have to live a normal life. You have to obey the law, religious rules, above all, religious rules, as much as you can in a non-Muslim country. But even so, I will say that Tatar Islam does not deviate from general Islam. I maintain the Tatar traditions. I like to attend the festivals and celebrate Tatar holidays. Just as I think that every person from different countries, despite the religious practice to which they are obliged, should maintain their own traditions from the country.
What do you think?
Okay, for me it's hard because I'm just following a conversation that I cannot understand. I pick up some words and then the body language, he seemed relatively good. So I think we were nice with him. We could have had some probing questions, which we reserve for later, right? Do you think we made friends?
I think we were friendly enough for a politician, skilled diplomat to be relaxed and comfortable. So I think it's fine. So I think we can also ask for another meeting later.
That's the main purpose of this meeting, I guess. Yeah. And were there particular questions or moments in the conversation that you felt that he hesitated or that he was uneasy? Because we touch on all sensitive topics without naming them. So he had the opportunity to go around it. But did he?
He didn't really go around. He misunderstood one question I asked, but then I asked further. He didn't go around things.
The other thing I found interesting was, and you had a quick translation to me, is when I asked about this, I find it a special situation of the bottom-up kind of appointment and election of imams and muftis. So the hypothesis was, I said, so some kind of community might then elect its own mufti, and then he did not really blink, but he said, if I am correct, sure, if they organize themselves and they are recognized by the state, in other words, they follow all the procedures to be recognized, they can have their own mufti. But later on, then he said, but the MZR represents all the Muslims, right?
And I asked a bit more about it. So he said, yes, they can organize themselves and have their own mufti. And then Muslim League did that. They had Nidal Abu Tabak. And
the other organization,
Yes, now there's a new mufti they also chose. But then he says, but according to the law of 1936, only mufti of MZR is representing all the Muslims to the state. So I asked, does he consult with other organizations? And he was basically, no, there is no law for consultation. There is only one representative who is representing officially.
Oh, he plays very much the legal game. Yes.
So many legal terms. He is a lawyer. Even if he's trained in Saudi Arabian Islamic law, he is a lawyer.
Okay.
I have to give him that. Also, so he said, of course, if it matters, I will go and consult with others if it's necessary. But usually the issues that we have here are, it's not necessary to consult with others.
No. The problem solving clearly is not, let's talk, let's find a solution. The problem solving is, what does the law say? How do we interpret the law? This is it.
And I'm the representative.
And that means I'm the boss. Yeah,
that's it.
Okay, let's see how the next meeting works out. After our discussion with the Mufti of Poland, we had walked to a cafe. And there Eva tells me something interesting. She knows about an imam who had almost been elected Mufti instead of the Mufti we had just talked to. His name is Janusz Aleksandrovich, and Ewa, being Ewa, had arranged a meeting with him. But before we get on our way to see him, I want some more background information on this person.
Okay, so this is what I know about Imam Aleksandrovich. He is one of the few Polish Tatars who has studied Islam abroad. And 12 years after Tomasz Miśkiewicz was elected as Mufti, there was another Congress of Tatar Muslims where they elected Janusz Aleksandrovich as the new Mufti. However, his appointment as a new Mufti was refused by the Minister of Religious Affairs because, so they said, Mufti Miśkiewicz was appointed for life. This is based on an interpretation of the law from 1936 that I mentioned earlier, and this has turned into a legal debate.
It's quite some intrigue then. So the Tatars are organized in a very democratic manner, but there's also a lot of political scheming, so it seems. Well, okay, let's go and meet Imam Aleksandrovich.
We have arrived in a neighborhood with 6-story apartment blocks. They all look alike, and it takes some time to find the right one. We ring the bell, get buzzed in, and take the elevator up. A friendly man who looks like he's in his 50s lets us into a tiny apartment. We sit at a small kitchen table and he serves us tea.
O nie, więc mogę pomieszać.
I know he studied abroad, so I start in Arabic.
Maurits and Janusz Aleksandrovich hit it off in Arabic, but when the conversation becomes more serious, Janusz says he prefers to speak in Polish so that he can make no mistakes when it comes to sensitive issues.
My musieliśmy co 3 miesiące wracać do kraju, stąd też przyjazdy.
I studied Islam in France. Communism had just ended in Poland. They had to come back every 3 months, and for that I had to pay myself. So I took the cheapest transport, which was the bus. And France was expensive. I worked during the holidays, but it was not enough, so I could only make it to my bachelor. Anyway, it was enough to learn more about religion. And now I can pass this knowledge on.
I teraz mogę tą wiedzę przekazać dalej, tak? Jestem imamem w Kruszynianach od 2006 roku.
I'm an imam in Kruszyniany since 2006. So it is a very great honor for me. But the Muslim community there is very small, so they cannot support me, and I do not get a salary from the government. That's why I also work as a bus driver.
Dlatego muszę pracować, tak? Ja pracuję jako kierowca, tutaj akurat tak się służyło.
I ask him what kind of work he does as an imam for a small Tatar Muslim community.
Oprócz tego takiego podstawowej obsługi
I provide the basic service as a clergyman to my parishioners, like weddings and funerals and the azan for newborns, what Christians call baptism. And of course, I lead services and give the Friday sermon. That is not always easy, because in Poland, Friday is a working day, a day of work, so we are not always able to get together. And the daily prayers, well, I live 50 kilometers from the mosque, so commuting is quite costly. So we take advantage of holidays, when a Friday falls on a Christian holiday. Or during Ramadan, there are nightly prayers, that is, after work hours. Except in winter time, because those Ramadan prayers are to be after sunset, and sometimes at 4 or 5 o'clock during the winter. And during summer, these night prayers are so late, sometimes after 11 o'clock at night, that we have too little time to sleep. Time management is always an issue. A baptism, we can plan ahead, but a funeral needs to be done within 1 or 2 days. That does not always work. Oh, and yes, on Saturdays I give religious lessons to children between 6 and 18 years. Well, what can I say? We try our best.
I am thinking about the Turkish imam that we met in Gdańsk. What does Imam Aleksandrowicz think about the foreign Muslims and the foreign imams in Poland?
No nie wiem, czy byśmy już tutaj w tym momencie przetrwali.
Well, I don't know if we could have survived without these foreign imams. The Mufti, Mr. Miśkiewicz, brings in imams from abroad, but you can only talk with them through an interpreter. So when that imam gives his Friday sermon, no one understands anything. And an imam has to be from the community, so the community can trust him. But an outsider does not understand our culture, our realities, because he is from abroad. And that is a mistake. With all due respect to all those imams who came and want to help, we should have our own people. But even if there are young people who want to study Islam, they would not pursue an education in this field. Why? Well, because there are no career perspectives. Being imam does not provide you with an income to live on.
Dlatego, że nie widzi perspektywy. Tu już nie chodzi o karierę. Po prostu, żeby człowiek mógł żyć z tego.
We sip our tea and Maurits starts some light conversation in Arabic again. But I want to move on to more serious matters. I know that Janusz Aleksandrowicz had almost occupied the position of Mufti of Poland, so I asked him what happened.
Właśnie w 2016 roku zostałem
That is correct. In 2016 I was elected Mufti. We had followed the correct procedures. Miśkiewicz also wanted to be elected, but he did not meet any of the conditions. The Mufti has to be older than 40, and he wasn't. And you have to have a university degree, and until now he has not shown any.
Według mnie ustawodawca nie miał na myśli to, że stanowisko przewodniczącego jest
But once you're elected as Mufti, you need confirmation from the state. So we went over to the ministry to do just that, but he had already arranged that for himself. He got the state confirmation, and now he is appointed as Mufti for life.
Więc jakim prawem? Więc my złożyliśmy skargi, tak, do wszystkich urzędów.
So we filed complaints and went to court, all the way up to the Supreme Court. The battle lasted several years, but the Supreme Court said that this is an internal matter of the Muslim community, and that no court can interfere. So we lost.
Nie może ingerować w wewnętrzne sprawy MZR-u. Zrobił instytucję halal dobrze.
And it's not only about power, but also about money. The Mufti is responsible for declaring products halal, meaning that they're okay to eat for Muslims. He does that by giving products a halal certificate. But he makes money with it. You see, Poland is one of the largest producers of halal meat in Europe. That is exported around the world. That is big business, and large part is in hands of the company of the wife of the Mufti. And the Mufti is the one who must officially declare that this is halal meat. He issues the certificates for that. That is his job. But he makes a lot of money with that.
To są naprawdę duże pieniądze.
After we have left, Ewa and I had a quick word about the conversation we just had. Wait. So we talked about the education of Polish Muslims, future generation of Polish
Muslims,
imams, scholars, etc. And then he get offers from where?
So he gets offers, basically, I guess what we heard before. So it's
from Islamic universities.
Islamic universities. So it is also Al-Azhar. It is, I think, Malaysia, it's Saudi Arabia, and probably other Islamic universities. So they have scholarships open for also Polish Muslims or Muslims living in Poland. What he says is they send them to people, but no one is really interested and they cannot force anyone to go. He also said that the converts, they know that the converts sometimes go abroad to study, the converts who converted to Islam in Poland or anywhere else also. But as far as they know, For example, one went to Medina, but they didn't finish their studies.
Yeah, because, and that might be the same situation that we had in the Netherlands, is that converts they will study because they're interested in it themselves. It's not for a career. And those who want to pursue a career in it must have a perspective. If you do not get employed by mosques, or if mosques have no money, which was the case in the Netherlands and, as I understand now, is the case here, well, why would you go through all the trouble of studying 4 or 5 years in Azhar and then end up unemployed, or, well, the Imam we talked to as a bus driver?
But this is exactly the point he made. He said exactly that. No one will go to study because even though you might get a scholarship, you will pay a price of being abroad for a few years. You're cut away from your family. It's expensive to travel back. And then what happens when you come back?
That's the Mufti made that point.
No, the Janusz Aleksandrowicz, the Imam. But that's also why when he said that they're sending offers to people, I asked about salaries and employment. That was my next question. Phrased differently, maybe not exactly in that context. But so then he said that the salaries are being paid. So his story is, there are offers of scholarships from abroad. We are sending them to people that are not really interested. We cannot force them, but if they would go and come back and the community elects them, so there's actually the pressure is on the community to elect the person that has been schooled and educated. So if they do, then someone will pay their salaries. So it's still choice of people. But what we know from the other side is that people are actually not seeing any perspective in it as a career, so they're not really risking it, possibly. During our conversations with people, we gradually uncovered the internal political conflicts within the minority. When we arrive at this subject, often the voices are lowered, microphones have to be turned off, people tell us, "You did not hear this from me." It's all a bit secretive because it's about possible abuse of power and misuse of money. Between meetings, Maurits has been cautiously asking me whether what we're hearing is mere gossip, slander, or if there's truth to it. The thing is, some facts are confirmed, so let's lay them out. The Tatars are recognized by the state both as a cultural and as a religious community. In both cases, no salaries are paid for the functionaries in these communities. At the same time, certain activities involve substantial sums of money. As Imam Janusz Aleksandrowicz pointed out, halal certification is a significant business. That may seem surprising given the small Muslim population in Poland, but the country produces large quantities of halal meat for export to Europe, Saudi Arabia, Algeria, the Emirates, and other places. Academics have shown that the Mufti was involved in developing this trade from the beginning, and one could argue that this is to the benefit of the Tatar community, that they have some source of income. But in 2011, the Mufti outsourced the issuing of halal certificates to his wife's private company, Halal System. Concerns have also been raised about the sale of properties belonging to the Muslim Union under the Mufti's leadership. Some Tatars protested and legal cases were filed. Yet, those who took action on behalf of the community were dismissed by the courts on the grounds that only the Mufti can officially represent the union in court. The courts treat it as an internal conflict. However, there is also another way to look at it, as Michał Łyszczarz explained to us.
Jedna rzecz tutaj zupełnie powiem szczerze.
Well, this is one thing, and here I will be completely honest. There is also the unresolved issue between the Tatars and the state regarding how the Mufti is supposed to make a living. If the Mufti had a salary paid by the union, there would be no problem. He wouldn't have had to find alternative means of income. when the statue of the Muslim Religious Union was created, and even earlier, before the war, the Tatars did not take into account the practical issue of how the Mufti would sustain himself. This matter has never been properly addressed. The Mufti, given his standard of living and his representational duties, must maintain a certain financial standing. That is why various activities related to halal certification, land and Turkish support have come into play. After all, the Turks provide funding, which goes not only toward the maintenance of imams, but also the Mufti.
Utrzymanie imamów, ale też Muftiego.
This is simply a mistake made by the state long ago, and no one has stepped in to correct it. Unfortunately, the state has washed its hands of the issue. It assumes that religious associations have autonomy and must manage these matters on their own.
I wy se radźcie, wy se róbcie co chcecie.
We are gradually digging deeper and deeper in this small community of Muslims at the far east end of European Union. What strikes me is the democratic organization of these communities. I know of no place where Muslims elect their imams and their muftis. On the other hand, such autonomy also invites all kinds of internal strifes and controversies. But while we started these conversations to learn more about the internal organization of the Tatars, we came out of it with questions about the next generation. Who are the next Tatars? How do they learn their Islam, and from whom? How is being a Tatar, both culturally and religiously, being passed on? And is the next generation even interested in being Tatar? And this is what we will try to find out in the last episode.
This podcast was hosted by Maurits Berger and Ewa Górska. Sound editing by Tomasz Stankiewicz, tostanki.pl. Voiceover Natalia Orkisz-Plebanek and Zbigniew Lecznar. Music in this podcast series is by Ansambl Peregrinus, which recreated traditional Tatar music, and by the Arab artists Sabri Mosbah, Tamer Nafar, Ghalia and Youssef Kehia.